This is Pamela and Bernard. We're out here, we're enjoying our front yard here. And I just wanted to introduce this broadcast by telling a very interesting story that we had. A few days ago, we were watching a program on the National Geographic Channel called, I think it was called Star Talk. And it's a program, if you're familiar with science at all, there's a wonderful astrophysicist named Neil deGrasse Taylor who loves to have a program. He's very delightful in personality, and he wants to bring science to the masses. And so he does this wonderful program weekly called Star Talk. There's our front yard. And last week he did a program with Chris Hadfield, I believe is his name. He's a well-known astronaut. He's known for his YouTube videos where he plays the guitar and does a lot of really interesting things. And so while we were watching this program, we were thinking about how he work with a lot of different people. He was asked a question about how was it when he was working with cosmonauts from Russia? And he said that there was nothing. He said, as far as they were concerned, he was just working with a bunch of people who love space and love being astronauts. And so that was their commonplace. There was no real issues regarding their culture, their language, or religion, or anything like that. They were just a bunch of people that got together that had the same interests, and they were able to walk together, work together, and accomplish amazing things. And it made Bernard and I think about how in our careers, particularly Bernard's, he has worked a lot with a whole lot of different people. And so we thought that we would just kind of do a broadcast. He would probably highlight a lot of his experiences that he has had, being an IT manager or researcher, just a lot of different things. And this is looking kind of strange here. I guess it's okay. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over here. I'm going to talk to Bernard, and he will give you a little bit of his experience. He's worked in several countries. As we've mentioned in earlier broadcasts, he is from France, and so he has some work experience in France, in Canada, and here in the United States. And so we're going to kind of do a little walk here and discuss, he'll discuss some of the things that he has done, starting with his career in France.
Yeah, I have to take a list of all the people I work with, because I worked with people for about 20 countries, all together. So in France, I work with French people, and there is nothing complicated working with French people. And but my first job, one of my colleagues in my team was from Pakistan, and that was very interesting. The only thing I remember from him, he was an engineer working in ionosphere, on stratosphere. And what was interesting, in winter, when it was cold, I mean about 32 degrees, he was coming at the office with big boots, and the first thing he was doing, he was putting his feet on the heating system, on the radiator, for an hour until he was able to get warm, and at that time he could work again. That was really interesting. So at the same place, same work on research, I work with Soviet people, which is quite interesting, not Russia, Soviets. And we had about 3 engineers from Soviet, and they were from Siberia, a place called Sogra, and we were making a test in the French in the Kerguelen Island, and we were sending a bunch of radio wave or whatever through the ionosphere between the Kerguelen and the Soviet, and we had to harmonize all of that. And we had to do a lot of work at night, which was quite interesting. So the Soviets were really nice to us. They never talked about communism, they never talked about the political situation in their country. They didn't want to escape. The only thing they wanted to do, which was amazing, they wanted to solve scientific projects. But to solve scientific projects, they had a method which for me was the best. At 5 o'clock afternoon, they were going to the Russian embassy. And they were coming back around 7. And we had a big party before working with vodka and caviar. I never had so much caviar in my life. And so it was quite interesting. So my next job in France, I was working in a lab, making research computers. And I work with Romanian, with a guy from, well, there were 3 Romanian. One was the engineer, and the other one, I guess one was a translator, and one was a spy, make sure the Romanians were not escaping, because Romania was communist under Ceausescu at that time, and we were making computers for them, and the way they purchase and buy the computer was really amazing. I want to mention, we had a train load of socks, and they were trading socks for computers. So that was quite interesting. And a few weeks later, or a few months later, I was working with Cuban in the same company, because we had relationship with Cuba. They had the US embargo, and they wanted to provide computer to them. So we were trading computer for sugar cane. That was quite interesting. And now, the thing I wanted to mention, this Cuban, to make sure they won't be lost and won't escape, all the time they have to wear big hats about that big, and some of the handlers were always with them, but they were quite friendly. I worked with American, but I don't have to mention that. So my next step was to work in Canada. That was really United Nations. We had people from Canada, from Quebec, and I was working with people from Armenia. And the people from Armenia, they taught me about Turkey and the massacre of Armenia. And it was quite interesting because I didn't know too much. I was working with British people. Oh my goodness, I found they had a weird accent, but they were nice and were very good. I worked with German also. These guys were always not on time. They were always arriving before time, and they were upset if you were not arriving before time at a meeting. Now, I worked with a guy from Cameroon. That was quite something. He was never on time. Okay, he was a good electronic or electric engineer, but he mentioned a bunch of things about his country I didn't know, but he was a good cook, and we became friends, and he was cooking for us Cameroon rabbit the Cameroon way, and we told him you could do it what you want Cameroon way, but please don't cook the rabbit with worm, which is a traditional over there, the tradition, so he didn't do it. The Armenian I was mentioning before became a good friend and was cooking for us. He was cooking what is called and lemon, something wonderful. I guess we have to make it here.
Maybe.
Now, maybe. I work in a company which was owned by Jewish people, and some very Orthodox and some not that Orthodox. And before going to the office, they kissed the mezuzah because it's a tradition. And some have phylacteries, some don't have. But the chief engineer for the database was an Algerian, a Muslim Algerian. And it was quite great because everybody was working together, the Muslim and the Jewish, and the Muslim became a good friend. He was one of the best experts I've ever known in database design, DB2, SQL, the whole thing. I was never able to be friends really with them, but we had good working relationship. I worked with Chinese, a guy who escaped Tiananmen Square with his family, and he was the best tester I have ever had in my professional life. A nice guy, became friends with him and his family. And now we have one which was very peculiar, a software engineer from Bangladesh. And he was wearing always the white Bangladesh robe coming to the office, a small hat, and everything. He was very professional, he was very good, but every day at 4 o'clock he had to go to the bathroom to wash himself. So that was something. We had to stop meetings for him, so we accommodated him. It was quite interesting. So, as you could see, I have worked with white, with black, with Asian, and with brown. Okay. Now, if you look at the faith of these people, I have worked with Jewish, with Muslim, Catholics, Protestant, Buddhist, atheist, and agnostic. That's, so I tell you, 18 or 20 countries, 4 different faiths, 4 races, etc. But guess what? Guess what? We had peace all the time. We are not shouting at each other. We didn't kill each other. It was amazing, and that's the way I see the people. You know, it's not what I look when I see on the news every night. So we have decided not to watch the news anymore. It's too bad, and it's too crimes, war, etc. But in all these people I have met, not a single antagonist. It was so great. Yeah, maybe Pam has some question.
Yes. Did you have any situations where you know, maybe y'all just had a discussion about your culture or anything like say, like during your mealtime or anything like that?
Yes, we had some discussion. I remember one of the discussion I had with a Cuban in Canada, Marcelo. It was a good guy, a good programmer, and I asked him, how did you come to Canada? Oh, he said, I escaped Cuba. And I said, and you know, they were very open, we discussed, and he said, yeah, I escaped Cuba. So my trick was to enroll in the Lumumba University in Moscow, go to a conference later in Vienna, and there we go, I escaped to the West. Okay, that was interesting. Another friend I have explained to me how he escaped Hungary. He was a physicist working on remote sensing, and he was really good. And I asked him, how do you escape from Hungary? You know, the Soviet tanks were there and everything. And he told me that a priest at that time, I told him, there is on the German border, I mean, at that time, which was East Germany and West Germany, there is a small chapel. And if you go in that chapel, you could go through a tunnel to West Berlin. And he said, well, that was a chance of my life. If it's not true, I got killed. And if it's true, I am free. And he did it. He went in that chapel and ended up in West Berlin and ended up in Canada. And I was working with him. So, you know, we were discussing these things, and they were sharing the way they came. A lot of people I met in the US from other countries came with the H-1B visa, and but they had a dream, all these guys. They wanted to stay in the US because they knew that's where science was developed, where progress was made. So we were discussing very openly all of this situation.
Yeah, and I know that at least in the beginning of your life, you were Catholic Christian.
Yes.
And then at some point, by the time you got before you got to the U.S., you became a Protestant Christian.
Yes.
Were there any times that you related your faith, you know, with your coworkers or anything like that?
Well, you know, it's something we were not really discussing because the guy from Algeria I mentioned was a Muslim, knew I was a born-again Christian. And he was talking to me about where in Algeria, where he was. It used to be under Saint Augustine, was a Christian land, but they were invaded by the Turk, and his ancestor, all of that, ended up being Muslim. He was explaining to me, but he knew a lot about Christian faith. Now, the Jewish company I was working for, one of the owners attended a private Catholic church, and I could tell you one thing: he knew more about the Bible than most of my born-again friends.
Okay. So no, this is quite interesting because in your talk, and we'll kind of wrap this up here in a minute, you talked about how you learned a lot from other people that you did not know before.
Yes.
And I think that's the one thing that is very important, that we realize that, you know, we can learn a lot from people that are not like us. And not only that, we can, you know, as we try to learn and understand people from, you know, different countries and different cultures like that, we can determine, you know, try and understand a person's point of reference. You know, if you happen to build relationships with people outside of the work environment or however you meet them,
Right.
you know, the exposure to other cultures and things like that can be so important.
I will add a story about the Soviet I was mentioning before, and they invited me to attend a conference in a theater, and that conference was involving Leonov, who was the first man who did an outside experience outside the Soyuz capsule, and he was the first man outside a spacecraft. And Leonov said at that time, he went outside, he walked outside, and what was interesting, he looked around and he was not able to see God. Mm-hmm. And so when we came back the next day, when I talked to my Soviet counterpart, we discussed it, and I told them, well, you know, God exists, and I believed in God, and you know, they never answered because they didn't want one of them to report to the KGB or whatever that they were Christian. But I told them, so I said, do you remember in the old days, Soviet Union was Christian, Orthodox Christian, and I told them at that time, I guess, that it will come back as an Orthodox Christian. I didn't know that the Soviet Union will implode and the Berlin Wall will crash, and the Soviet Union became Russia and ended up being far more open.
Yeah, like I said, we just kind of found this topic quite interesting because it seems like here, at least in the U.S., there's so much angst between people dealing with religion and politics and that kind of thing. And we just wanted to do this short little discussion to know that even though, you know, you may be of a different faith or no faith, that you can respect other people as human beings on the earth here, and that, you know, everyone is valuable. Everyone is valuable, everyone is precious, everyone is important, and that we shouldn't look down on people just because they're different. They're just different.
Well, for example, we have a friend from Vietnam, living in Vietnam, and they are from Indonesia, and you
Yes.
see, that's from a communist country, that's a new phone.
Yeah, iPhone.
The iPhone.
Yes,
you know,
I have one on as well, but I won't flip it over here as we're going to wrap up this. We're going to wrap up this talk here. We hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, we plan to. This will stay up for about another 24 hours, and we will post this video on our blog, letgoletsgo.com. letgoletsgo.com, and you have to put the www in front of it. Anyway, we're going to end this, and we're a little longer than we planned, but we hope to catch you next time. You all have a great day.